Imagine you have that nagging old injury, maybe from high school sports, or maybe a chronic health thing that's just always been there. Now, picture this. Your job, the day-to-day stuff, suddenly makes that condition way worse, significantly worse. Is that still? Is it considered a work injury? That's the really interesting question we're digging into today. In this deep dive, we're kind of cutting through the jargon around aggravation. It's a super important concept in federal workers' comp, but honestly, it can be confusing. So, our mission today is pretty simple. Give you a clear, quick guide to understanding what happens when work makes a pre-existing condition worse. And crucially, why knowing the difference between a temporary and a permanent aggravation is just absolutely vital for you. We're pulling this straight from OWCP specifics using real examples. Think USPS, TSA, IRS, and we'll even touch on how specialized help can make a huge difference. Get ready for some aha moments, hopefully. So let's unpack this. When we talk about a work-related aggravation, what does that actually mean in the world of federal workers' comp?
Right. Well, the key thing to understand here is an aggravation isn't about getting a totally new injury out of the blue. It means something connected to your work. Maybe a specific incident or even just ongoing exposure has definitely worsened a medical condition you already had.
Okay, so something you already dealt with is now worse because of the job.
Exactly. Your pre-existing problem becomes a bigger problem, directly linked to work. And then OWCP, that's the Office of Workers' Compensation Programs, they'll look really closely at the medical evidence. They need to figure out if that worsening is just temporary or if it's permanent. And believe me, that difference changes everything.
And that distinction, temporary versus permanent, yeah, that sounds like the real linchpin for benefits, for ongoing coverage. This is where it gets really interesting, isn't it? The long-term impact must be totally different.
Oh, absolutely. They're worlds apart. So a temporary aggravation, think of it like a short-term flare-up, maybe an increase in how severe your symptoms are for a bit. But the critical part, after this period, your condition goes back to its baseline, back to how it was before that work incident flared it up.
Ah, okay.
So OWCP compensates you, but only for that specific time when work factors made it worse. Once you're back to your usual state, OWCP's responsibility for that specific flare-up ends.
Right. So let's say a federal worker, they have a known dust allergy. And then there's construction at work, loads of dust, and they have a really bad reaction. OWCP would cover the treatment, maybe lost time during that episode. But once the symptoms calm down back to their normal allergy level, that specific claim for the aggravation is done.
That's it, precisely. The period they cover is limited. Or think about a mail carrier. Maybe they've got an old back injury that usually just sort of nags them. But during the crazy holiday parcel season, really heavy loads, their back pain gets significantly worse.
Okay.
If they get some light duty, things improve, and the pain goes back to its typical everyday level. Well, OWCP covers the medical care and maybe wage loss just for that flare-up period. It's like a short burst of work impact.
Okay, that makes sense. Temporary means it eventually goes back to the old baseline. That's a clear marker. But then permanent aggravation. That sounds like it changes the whole game.
It's a completely different situation, yes.
Yeah.
Permanent aggravation means the work exposure or maybe that specific injury has caused lasting effects. Your condition is materially worse, and the key is it won't go back to its old baseline. It's not expected to.
Wow.
So because of that work event, you're left with a greater level of impairment, a more severe condition, pretty much indefinitely. OWCP sees this as the work injury, creating a new, higher baseline of severity that isn't going to resolve back to where you were before.
So this isn't just like, oh, I had a bad week at work. This sounds like it could genuinely change someone's whole career trajectory with the government, right? Even though the initial issue was pre-existing.
That's exactly the profound implication. If you think bigger picture, a permanent aggravation means the work incident has fundamentally altered the underlying condition for the long term. So OWCP might accept that condition as work-related on an ongoing basis.
Ongoing, meaning?
Meaning you could be entitled to long-term medical treatment, potentially ongoing benefits for that new, higher level of disability. It could even lead to things like needing job modifications, retraining, or maybe even looking at federal disability retirement if you can no longer perform your duties.
Yeah.
Things a temporary flare-up usually wouldn't trigger.
Can you give us a solid example of a permanent one?
Sure. Let's say you have a worker with mild asthma. It's usually well managed. But then there's a harsh chemical spill at work. They're exposed. And that exposure causes a long-term, irreversible increase in their asthma sensitivity. So now future attacks are much more severe, much more frequent than they ever would have been otherwise.
Okay.
That would likely be seen as a permanent aggravation. The work incident genuinely changed their respiratory health for good.
Okay, so you've had an aggravation happen. Now let's get practical. What form do you actually file? Because I'm guessing there isn't just a box that says aggravation.
No, not quite that simple. The form you use really depends on how the injury or the worsening happened, not just the fact that it was an aggravation.
Mhm.
You use Form CA1, that's the Federal Employees Notice of Traumatic Injury.
Right, the traumatic injury one.
Yeah, for something that happened during one day or one work shift, a specific event. Even if that specific event just aggravated an old problem, if it happened in one go, it's a CA1.
Gotcha. Like our postal worker example had prior knee surgery, slips on ice delivering mail, twists that same knee again. Aggravates the old injury, but it was one slip, one incident, so CA1.
Exactly right. Then you've got Form CA2, that's the Notice of Occupational Disease. Use this one when the injury or condition develops over time, or maybe it's due to repetitive work stuff happening over more than one day or shift. Think cumulative trauma, long-term exposure.
Okay, so the TSA officer example fits here, right? Mild degenerative back disease, but after months of lifting heavy bags over and over at the checkpoint, the pain gets much worse. That's gradual. That's CA2.
You've nailed it. And here's something really vital. Whether you file a CA1 or a CA2, your OWCP claim has to clearly talk about the aggravation and the medical evidence. It's absolutely non-negotiable. You need it to show the causal link, how work worsened your condition.
Makes sense.
What's interesting is OWCP's own procedures actually tell claims examiners to figure this out. Was the condition caused by work directly, or was it pre-existing and aggravated by work? And crucially, if it was aggravated, was it temporary or permanent?
So the doctor needs to spell that out.
Your doctor must state this explicitly in their narrative report. They can't just describe the symptoms. They have to connect the dots to work and state if the worsening is temporary or permanent with their medical reasoning.
That sounds critical, especially, I imagine, for those permanent aggravation claims. The medical evidence has to be rock solid because OWCP might even want a second opinion, given the long-term costs involved.
That's very likely, yes. The stakes are higher with permanent aggravation.
Mm-hmm.
And just a quick tip on filing. Try to be timely. Ideally within 30 days for a CA1 if you want to be eligible for continuation of pay, and generally within 30 days of realizing the connection for a CA2.
Good tip.
And remember this, OWCP cannot legally deny your claim just because you had a condition before. An aggravation is absolutely compensable if you have the medical evidence showing your federal job made it worse.
What's like the biggest mistake people make here? A common misconception, maybe?
Oh, a huge one I hear all the time is employees thinking, well, I already had this problem, so I can't file. That's just not true. FECA, the law, is clear. If your job made an existing condition worse, it's potentially compensable. The real hurdle usually isn't the pre-existing condition itself.
It's the proof.
It's getting that doctor's report that explicitly draws the line, connects the work to the worsening, and clearly states if it's temporary or permanent. So many claims get tripped up just because that crucial medical narrative is missing, or it's too vague.
Let's make this even more real. Let's talk about some scenarios in specific federal agencies, like the Postal Service, USPS.
Okay, yeah. A letter carrier? Maybe they have a history of knee osteoarthritis. And after years walking a route, carrying those heavy satchels day in, day out, their knee pain gets significantly worse.
That sounds like a CA2 over time.
Exactly. If the doctors look at it and say, look, this repetitive stress has permanently aggravated the arthritis, it's causing the joint to deteriorate faster than it normally would have, OWCP would probably accept that as a permanent aggravation. That means ongoing coverage for treatment, maybe modifications, potentially for their whole career if they stay with USPS.
Okay, but what if it was just a bad flare-up?
Right. If that same carrier just had a really tough week, lots of overtime, heavy loads, and the knee flared up badly, but then with some rest, maybe light duty, it went back to its usual achy baseline.
Then it's temporary.
That is temporary.
Yeah.
OWCP covers that flare-up period, and that's it for that specific incident.
Okay. How about TSA? Lots of lifting, standing there too.
Yeah, definitely. So imagine a TSA baggage screener. Maybe they had a shoulder injury before, like a rotator cuff tear that healed okay.
Yeah.
Then one day, lifting a really heavy suitcase, bang, they re-injure that same shoulder. That's a specific event, so
Right.
CA1.
Right.
Now, if the new medical evidence shows this new tear means the shoulder won't fully heal back to where it was before the incident, maybe it's structurally worse now.
Permanent aggravation.
That's likely a permanent aggravation. They might have lasting lifting restrictions. Maybe you needed a different role. But contrast that. Maybe a TSA officer has chronic low back pain, just sort of always there.
Yeah.
And after a month of dealing with a surge in oversized luggage, so CA2 over time, their pain spikes. But after some modified duty, the pain settles back down to their typical level. That's a temporary aggravation.
Huh.
OWCP covers the treatment for that spike, but their responsibility ends once the officer is back to baseline.
And even somewhere like the IRS, you might think, oh, desk jobs, less risk. But aggravations can happen there too.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
Think about carpal tunnel. Maybe an IRS employee already had some mild pre-existing carpal tunnel, maybe from home computer use, whatever. Then comes tax season, weeks and weeks of intense data entry, and their symptoms just explode.
Right.
That's over time, so CA2.
Okay.
If, after tax season, maybe with some rest, wrist braces, their symptoms go back to the mild level they were before, the doctor reports it as a temporary aggravation. OWCP covers the flare-up treatment.
But it could be permanent too.
Yes. Say an IRS revenue officer, maybe they have a known degenerative disc issue in their back, and they fall down some stairs in the office while carrying files. That's a traumatic event, CA1.
Mm-hmm.
If that fall causes a new problem, like a herniated disc, right on top of the existing degenerative disease, and that combination permanently makes their overall back condition much worse than it was before the fall.
That's a permanent aggravation.
Exactly, even though it happened at a desk job agency.
You know, hearing these examples, it really strikes me what stands out to you. Because the core principles seem incredibly consistent, regardless of whether it's USTS, TSA, IRS.
That consistency is precisely the point. The specific job, the type of incident, sure, that varies widely, but the requirement, it's always the same. You need solid medical evidence showing that work somehow contributed to making your condition worse than it would have been otherwise, beyond just its normal progression.
Mm.
And you absolutely need that clear medical opinion, temporary or permanent. That's a constant across the board. If you have that medical proof connecting the dots, the aggravation is compensable under FECA.
Okay, so you're in this situation, you've got the pre-existing conditions, something happened at work, it feels worse, and now you need to prove all this to OWCP. Honestly, it sounds like a lot to manage on your own, especially when you're, trying to heal.
It really, really is. Aggravation claims, in particular, they can be tough because OWCP needs that super strong medical documentation, like really clear story linking the old condition to the new worsening caused by work. It's a specific kind of evidence they're looking for.
And this is where getting specialized help seems like it could be, well, almost essential. We're talking about clinics that really understand the OWCP system inside and out. Places like Restore Muscle and Joint, they operate as federal injury centers in Kansas City and St. Louis. They're a great example of this kind of specialized place, right? Focusing specifically on federal employees navigating this exact process.
Yeah, their value is really clear because they address those key challenges head on. First off, their teams often include DOL credentialed doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists, people who aren't just good at treating injuries, but who are also really experienced with the federal workers' comp system. They know how to do the evaluations needed to establish, okay, what was your baseline condition before the work incident versus where are you now? That comparison is crucial for proving aggravation. They're kind of building your medical case while they treat you.
That documentation piece sounds huge.
It is. And they excel at writing those comprehensive medical narratives. This is honestly where so many claims fall apart. The doctor's report just isn't specific enough, or it doesn't use the language OWCP needs. Restore Muscle and Joint providers. They know how to write reports that explicitly say things like, based on my examination and the history, the patient's pre-existing knee arthritis was materially and permanently aggravated by the repetitive walking and stair climbing required by their duties as a letter carrier. The condition will not revert to its pre-aggravation baseline. They provide that clear, rationalized medical opinion.
Wow, so they're not just treating you, they're meticulously building the paperwork needed to get the claim approved. That must take a huge weight off the employee's shoulders.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the medical reports. They often offer free claims assistance, too, helping fill out the CA1 or CA2 correctly, making sure you hit deadlines, guiding you away from common mistakes that can sink a claim. They can even help figure out tricky things, like should this new incident be a brand new claim for aggravation? Or is it technically a recurrence of an old accepted claim?
Right.
That distinction matters.
Right, that could be confusing.
And importantly, they provide the actual treatment, physical therapy, chiropractic, maybe injections, and they do it in a way that follows all the FECA rules. They know OWCP's billing codes, treatment protocols, that keeps your claim in good standing. And because they've worked with employees from all sorts of agencies, USPS, TSA, VA, IRS, you name it, they understand the different job demands, and what kind of documentation OWCP typically looks for in each case.
So basically, getting help like that lets you actually focus on getting better while they handle the complexities of getting the OWCP claim approved. It's a huge peace of mind. Okay, so let's recap quickly. Work injuries making pre-existing conditions worse. Super common in federal jobs. And understanding that key difference, temporary versus permanent aggravation, is absolutely vital for your rights and what OWCP will cover. Always report the injury, use the right form CA1 for sudden events, CA2 for things over time, and crucially, work with a doctor who gets OWCP and can clearly document how your job impacted your condition.
Yeah, that medical evidence. It's really your best friend in these cases. It's what OWCP relies on to make their decision.
So thinking about all this, what does it really mean for you, the listener? Well, beyond just getting the immediate claim handled, how your aggravation is classified temporary or permanent has really big long-term consequences. If it's deemed a permanent aggravation, that could open doors to things like needing a job reassignment to something within your new permanent limitations, or potentially even federal disability benefits if you truly can't work anymore because of it. It just highlights how incredibly important it is to distinguish between a temporary flare-up and a work injury that causes a life-changing, permanent worsening. Don't underestimate the power of getting that medical documentation crystal clear, and maybe getting some expert guidance on the journey, getting it right from the start. That can seriously impact your life for years down